ヂLEX is a modern, full-service commercial and dispute resolution law firm. We are one of the largest law firms in West Africa, with offices in Lagos, Port Harcourt and Abuja in Nigeria and Accra, Ghana. This strategic positioning ensures that we are able to provide hands-on services all across the country and West Africa. The firm has 11 partners, an international counsel, and over 60 lawyers, some of whom are admitted to practice in several jurisdictions, including New York, Texas, Ghana, England, and Wales. In addition to qualifying in law, lawyers in the firm have qualifications in disciplines such as political science, economics, business administration, and engineering. ヂLEX has provided legal advisory services on major transactions and projects across several of the firm's practice area. We are a recognized leader in providing legal services and have earned a reputation for excellent work in various practice areas, including energy and natural resources, mergers and acquisitions, and private equity, dispute resolution, corporate and commercial, taxation, labor and employment, banking and finance, foreign direct investment, intellectual property and technology, transportation, capital markets, aviation, environment, and telecommunications. Clients of the firm are predominantly multinational companies, including oil and gas companies, banks and financial institutions, airlines, insurance companies, shipping lines, trading and manufacturing conglomerates. The firm advises foreign embassies, multilateral agencies, non-governmental organizations, chambers of commerce, and private clients. ヂLEX has consistently won awards and recognitions for quality of work and service from globally renowned ranking firms. We are ranked as top-tier firm by IFLR. Chambers Global also ranked the firm as leading firm. We have been voted several times by Who's Who Legal as Nigerian Law Firm of the Year. We believe in consistently rendering distinctive services and providing our clients with positive outcomes and winning solutions. The firm merges local expertise and industry-wide connections with an appreciation of global service delivery standards. Not only is the firm known for professionalism, competence, and capacity, the firm also has a culture of inclusiveness and giving back to society, which is embodied in initiatives like its annual lecture. The ヂLEX Annual Lecture Series was inaugurated in 2005 to commemorate the founding of the practice through a medium that calls attention to topical issues in society. It has been held on an annual basis since then. The lecture draws from the experience of thought leaders in government, education, business, and economics, speaking to carefully selected topics covering contemporary issues relevant to the legal and business world. The primary objective is to stimulate positive changes in Nigeria and Africa's economic, educational, political, and social circumstances. The inaugural lecture in 2005 was delivered by Professor Don Wallace, Chairman, International Law Institute, Washington, D.C., USA. He spoke on The Regulator in a Deregulated Economy. This year's lecture, tagged The Nigeria We Want, Economic, Political, and Social Justice, is the 15th in our annual lecture series.
Previous lectures include 2006, Competition Policy as an Engine for Economic Growth. Speaker, Professor Frederick Jenny, Judge, French Supreme Court, Chairman Committee on Competition Law and Policy, OECD, Paris, France. 2007, Corporate Governance, Who Profits? Speaker, Judge Mervyn King, FC, Chairman King Committee on Corporate Governance, South Africa. 2008, Freedom of Information, Balancing the Public's Right to Know Against the Individual's Right to Privacy. Speaker, Mr. Dele Olojede, Chairman, Timbuktu Media and Pulitzer Prize winner for 2005. 2009, How Ghana Kept the Lights On. Speaker, Dr. Kwabena Donko, the Honorable Deputy Minister of Energy, Republic of Ghana. 2010, Taxation Without Representation. Speaker, Dr. Kalu Idika Kalu, OFR, Chairman, BGL PLC, and former Minister of Finance, Federal Republic of Nigeria. 2011, Corruption, the Thief in Broad Daylight. Speaker, Mr. John Githongo, former Permanent Secretary for Governance and Ethics, Office of the President of Kenya. 2012, This House Was Not For Constitutional Reform and the People's Will. Speaker, Dr. Ali A. Masri, an Albert Schweitzer Professor in Humanities and Director of the Institute of Global Cultural Studies, Binghamton University, New York. 2013, In God's Name, Politics, Religion, and Economic Development. Speaker, Professor Timothy S. Shah, an Associate Director of Religious Freedom Project at the Berkeley Center for Religion, Peace, and World Affairs and visiting Assistant Professor in the Government Department, Georgetown University, USA. 2014, we celebrated our 10th anniversary with a dinner on the 19th November 2014 at Oriental Hall, Victoria Island, Lagos, Nigeria. 2015, Politics, Democracy, and Ethnicity. Speaker, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, former Minister of External Affairs.
The format of the lecture changed from 2016 when we introduced panel discussions. The theme for that year was Making States Work. The panel consisted of Mr. Donald Duke, CON, former governor of Cross River State, Mr. Peter Obi, CON, former governor of Anambra State, Mr. Aigboje Aimohade, CON, President of the Council, Nigerian Stock Exchange, Mr. Isaac Babatunde, Executive Director, Corporate and Sub-Sovereign Ratings, Augusto & Co., and Prof. Chidi Odinkalu, African Program of the Open Society Justice Initiative. The theme for 2017 was Schooling Without Learning. Late Professor Ibidapo Obe, former Vice-Chancellor, University of Lagos, was guest lecturer with Chief Folake Sholanke, SAN, the first female senior advocate of Nigeria, as chairperson. The discussants were Dr. Adamu Jatau Noma, Executive Director, FCT, Universal Basic Education Board, Professor Tunde Fatunde, Professor of Francophone Studies, Lagos State University, Mrs. Adora Ojo, former Principal, International School, Lagos, and Miss Swanta Blessing Bonat, Principal, Kataf Youth Academy. The 2019 lecture theme was Strong Men versus Strong Institutions, Strengthening Democracy in Africa, and was delivered by Professor P.L.O. Lumumba, Associate Professor of Public Law and former Director and Chief Executive Officer of the Kenyan School of Law. Honorable Justice Aloma Mariam Mukhtar, CON, CFR, GCON, former Chief Justice of Nigeria, chaired the occasion. The discussants were Dr. Joe Abba, former DAI, Country Director for Nigeria and former Director General of the Bureau for Public Services Reforms, and Mr. Fola Arthur Warre, former Executive Secretary and Chief Executive Officer of the Lagos State Security Trust Fund, LSSTF. Illiteracy, Migration and Insecurity, Nigeria's Population Time Bomb. The discussants were Honorable Abike Dabiri Erewa, Chairman, Nigerians in Diaspora Commission and former member, House of Representatives. Mr. Mohammed Yahya, Resident Representative, United Nations Development Program, UNDP. Nima Akashat Zibiri, co-host of TVC's Your View. The lecture was moderated by Mrs. Shola Shoyele, Channels Television's Judiciary Correspondent. Ladies and gentlemen, please sit back and enjoy a robust presentation of this year's колег 15th Annual Lecture on the theme, The Nigeria We Want, Economic, Political, and Social Justice.
My name is Odinaka Ukoyi, and I am a Senior Associate at колег. On behalf of the partners and the entire staff of ṟLEX, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to the 15th ṟLEX annual lecture with the topic, The Nigeria We Want, Economic, Political, and Social Justice. Before I introduce the moderator of today's event, we'll sing the national anthem and also listen to a welcome speech by the managing partner of ṟLEX. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's sing the national anthem. Ladies and gentlemen, once more, we appreciate your presence at this annual lecture. I now invite the managing partner of ṟLEX, Mr. Adedapo Olowu, a senior advocate of Nigeria, to give us a welcome address.
My name is Adedapo Olowu. I am the managing partner of ṟLEX. ṟLEX is a full-service law firm with offices in Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt in Nigeria, and Accra in Ghana. I am delighted to welcome you to the 15th edition of the ṟLEX annual lecture. The lecture series commenced in 2005 in commemoration of the founding of our firm. The lectures provide a platform for discussing pertinent national issues due to preferring solutions to our country's problems. Bearing in mind the recent events in Nigeria, like the NSAS protests, the rising cost of living, and the current political instability in the country, we have carefully chosen the theme of this year's lecture as the Nigeria we want, economic, political, and social justice. We have put together a panel of experts to discuss this topic. It's my honor to welcome all of you to what will no doubt be an invigorating and insightful discourse as we shape the Nigeria we want. Thank you for your presence, and I wish you an exciting experience.
Thank you so much, Leonard Silk, for the welcome address. Our moderator for this annual lecture is Ms. Ibijoke Faborode. To tell you a bit about her, she is the co-founder and executive director of ṟLEX, a non-partisan Pan-African political organization. She drives the vision to bridge inequality gaps in African democracy by engaging critical stakeholders, encouraging and equipping women to run for office, and enabling them to win elections. In a bid to strengthen women's representation in Nigeria, her organization recently launched a $10 million fund to empower 1,000 women and directly fund 35 women candidates in the 2023 elections. She has worked with the UK Foreign and Commonwealth Office, leading on policy, trade, and investment relations across West Africa, and with Paris-based publication, The African Report, where she led communications campaign for governments and some of the biggest brands in Africa. She earned a bachelor's degree in Nigeria in history and international relations, and a master's degree in France on project management. She completed executive training in business analytics at Imperial College Business School and is currently enrolled in an executive master's program in social business and entrepreneurship at the London School of Economics. Ms. Faborode is passionate about social innovation design, and she's always looking to collaborate on solutions to tackle inequality and poverty in Africa. Among other accolades, she is a 2019 One Young World Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs Scholar and a 2019 nominee for the Future Awards Africa Prize for Public Service. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor of inviting Ms. Faborode to take over and moderate this lecture.
Good afternoon, Odinaka. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. I'd like to once again welcome everyone to the 15th annual lecture, which really touches on a topic that's very dear to our art and also mirrors just where we are as a nation today. But before I start and obviously introduce the great lineup of speakers that we're going to be engaging in today, and I must say that, you know, when the brief was shared with me and when I saw the lineup, I knew that this will be a very honest conversation, and this is a very timely conversation, and given just the scale and the scope of work and the track record that our panelists have also, being able to as well, that this is going to be a very impactful decision that will obviously be solutions driven as well. So I welcome you again, but before I start welcoming the faculty or the panelists, please note that we will be having poll questions at different points during the lecture, and there should be one showing on your screens right now. Is that right, Odinaka? Do we have the questions? Okay, great. There should be one showing on your screen right now, so kindly fill them as quick as possible, because I think this would also be a great start to the conversation we're about to have today as well. Okay, while people are filling and without, holding our panelists, who I know are very busy individual, and I must thank you very much for taking this time out of your very busy schedules to really, engage and discuss the future of our dear country, Nigeria. Today, we will be discussing the Nigeria we want: economic, political, and social justice. Now, just as we were backstage, Mrs. Awoshike, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot before I actually introduce you, she said something that really stuck with me. She said, "We don't have a choice. Nigeria is home. We can't give up on it." And I think that is a very powerful way to start the conversation. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mrs. Ibukun Awoshika. I know we all know her for the privilege of this conversation, I'm just going to do a short introduction on her as well, so kindly oblige me. Mrs. Awoshika is an entrepreneur, motivational speaker, an author, mother, and pastor. She's a graduate of chemistry from the University of Ife, Nigeria. She is an alumna of the Chief Executive Program of Lagos Business School, the Global Executive MBA of IESC Business School, Barcelona, Spain, and the Global CEO Program of Wharton IESC and CIBS Business Schools. Mrs. Awoshika is a fellow of the African Leadership Initiative, Aspen Global Leadership Network, Institute of Directors and Society for Corporate Governance Nigeria. Through our projects such as the After School Graduate Development Center, Mrs. Awoshika aspires to create jobs for the large unemployed youthful population. She's also the co-founder and former chairman of the board of trustees of Women in Management Business and Public Service, WINBIZ, a platform that empowers women in business. She is a member of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, served on the National Job Creation Committee, and sits on the International Advisory Board of IESC Business School, Barcelona, Spain. On 7th September 2015, she was appointed as Chairman Board of Trustees of the First Bank of Nigeria, making her the first female chairman of the bank. She also serves on several other boards, including Cadre Nigeria, Digital Limited, and the International Advisory Board of IESC Business School, Barcelona, Spain. She has served on the board of the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority and the National Job Creation Committee. She's also a fellow of the Africa Leadership Initiative, Aspen Global Leadership Network, Institute of Directors of the Society for Corporate Governance Nigeria. Welcome, Mrs. Awosika. Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure having you today.
Thank you very much. My pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Our next panel is Mr. Frank Nweke. Welcome and thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Frank. Mr. Frank is a director in Brass Fertilizer and Petrochemical Company Limited. He was the Minister of Youth, Minister of Information and Communications from 2003 to 2007 and served as Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group between 2009 and 2014. He was a consultant to the Enugu State Government on development planning and public sector reforms in 1999 and coordinator of Enugu State Community Development Program 2000-2001. In June 2001, he was appointed as the Chief of Staff to the Governor of Enugu State, which he held until June 2003. The recognition of his intellect and dedication to duty as the Chief of Staff to the government of Enugu State led to his appointment as a federal minister in 2003, making him one of the youngest members of the Nigerian federal cabinet in which he served. In 2009, Mr. Frank was appointed as Director General of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. His work so passionately to transform the NESG into a world-class think tank and fostering linkages and partnerships with the World Economic Forum, Brookings Institute, and the Center for the Study of Economics of Africa, amongst others. He currently sits on the board of some of Nigeria's leading companies. He is an Edward Mason Fellow at the Harvard University and President of Nigeria's Harvard Kennedy School Alumni Association. Welcome, Mr. Frank. Thank you for joining us today. The next person on our panel is someone that is familiar to the political terrain as one of, she paved the way essentially for younger women like us in the political space, and definitely made us understand that if you can think it, you can do it as well. She is Professor Remi Shonaya. Professor Shonaya holds a French language and linguistics degree from the University of Ife, now Obafemi Awolowo University, Nigeria, and Cornell University, US. She taught at the university for 30 years before retiring voluntarily into politics in 2010. She was COA's party candidate in the Nigeria's 2015 presidential election, an experience documented in a book, One Woman's Race. Professor Mrs. Shonaya has written other books on Nigeria and African development, A Trust to Earn, Reflections on Life and Leadership in Nigeria, amongst other publications. She was appointed the first ambassador scientist to the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation of Germany. She is a 2015 alumni of the Yale University Women for Africa Foundation Leadership Program and the US State Department's International Visitor Leadership Program, amongst other recognition. Thank you so much for joining us today, Professor Shonaya. And the last but not the least panelist for today is Mr. ЛEX Elder. Mr. ЛEX is the founder and principal of the Elder Consulting, Nigeria's leading creative intelligence firm with offices in Lagos and London. He is credited with introducing branding as a discipline to Nigeria and has consulted on politics, policy, and business at highest levels, locally and internationally. He has consulted on policy formulation for the federal government of Nigeria, the Federal Ministries of Information and Communication, Education, Foreign Affairs, and Solid Minerals Development, amongst others. He has also consulted on political strategy and communication campaigns at the national and subnational levels. I could really go on and on about, the profile of our guest today, but thank you so much, Mr. ЛEX Elder. I wouldn't want to go too deep into introducing obviously our panelists today, because we have a long hour ahead of us to discuss the conversation. But thank you for joining us today. Now, one of the reasons why we had to read out the profile of our panelists is just for you to understand where we're coming from and why we've carefully chosen our set of panelists today to obviously discuss this conversation as we set the course and the pathway for the development of Nigeria and ask that pertinent question: what exactly do we want? What is the Nigeria of our dreams, or the Nigeria that we want? And on this note, I am going to start by just saying that the past year, for example, has just been a very defining period for the world, but also for Nigeria as well. We've seen heightened unrest, insecurities, heightened economic inequalities, obviously triggered by the pandemic, but obviously showed the nation's lack of preparation to actually address such pandemic and actually expose the lack of social safety nets. But we also experienced the NSAS campaign. And I think for the first time, in a very long time, we actually saw a coordinated approach. Now that we achieved what we wanted to achieve as a nation, that's a question that has been controversial, but there were lessons learned, but it also reflected the level of agitation, especially within the younger generation, stemming from police brutality, torture, harassment. Also during the pandemic here, there were heightened cases of domestic violence against women as well. And so, looking at all this as a nation, we need to ask ourselves, where are we headed towards? Where are we going to? At the moment, Lagos, which is one of the most popular cities in Africa, actually ranks one of the unsafest cities to live in the world. And I remember when I saw that data, I was like, oh, okay, I thought Lagos was a bit safe. You live in a bubble sometimes, when you're within this environment. But to be honest, this problems really touch on each and every one of us. And for a long time, the private sector, for example, have had a level of apathy when it comes to politics in Nigeria, forgetting that policy making is, in fact, the duty of every single person and every citizen. On this note, I'm going to start with one critical question, and I'm going to start. Can you confirm, have we lost Mrs. Awoshika, because I can't see her?
Hi, Bijoke. So she's off for the moment. She'll be back later.
Oh, okay, that's fine then. All right. Okay, so I'm going to start with you, Mr. Frank. And I know that was a question that, someone had posed when we were backstage, saying, before we even start this conversation and we want to talk about the Nigeria we want, what exactly is the Nigeria we want? What is it? What context should we understand before we delve deep into the conversation? What is the now, and what is the Nigeria that we want?
Well, thank you so much, moderator. It's a pleasure to be here. And then, of course, my profound thanks to колег for inviting me to be on this very eminent panel. It's for someone like me, I like to keep things very, very simple. Okay. The theme of this lecture, of this year's lecture, or the theme of our conversation is, it's really nothing novel about it. It speaks to the concerns of almost every Nigerian anywhere in the world. When Nigerians gather, this is the kind of thing that they begin to focus on, that they begin to talk about, the Nigeria we want. And to put it simply, for me, where we are today, I want a Nigeria that is secure. That's it, a Nigeria that is secure. It's so important to me because it is at the heart of everything else, right? I want a Nigeria where governance is development driven, okay? Regrettably today, we're still grappling with the most basic needs of human existence, things that other humans in other parts of the world take for granted. Security, that I can walk the streets of Abuja or Lagos or anywhere without looking behind me, just without looking back, right? So, of course, I want a Nigeria where everybody feels a sense of inclusion. Everybody feels included. All citizens are treated equally. I'm Igbo by tribe, right? I was born in Kano, okay? I grew up in Maiduguri. I grew up in Lagos. I speak the 3 major languages. But today in Nigeria, I have never been, I've become more conscious of the fact that I'm Igbo. It wasn't always that way. It was never, ever an issue for me. But that's because of the quality of leadership that we have today. The country is more divided than ever before. That is not acceptable. So you have a situation where some people from some parts of the country feel excluded from the governance of the country, from the management of the country. This is not acceptable. You cannot build a nation that way. You cannot build a united nation that way, a cohesive nation that way. You cannot promote national unity that way. That is not good. You have a situation where our young people are currently despondent. You have people walking across this desert, swimming across the Mediterranean to get to just in search of greener pastures, if I may borrow that cliche. Now, how can a nation, how can you sacrifice your youngest people, the people who should perpetuate the species or this Nigerian species? We're sacrificing them simply because government fails to make the right policy choices, simply because you have incompetent leadership, simply because you have corrupt, intensely corrupt leadership. It makes no sense to me at all, and no nation can make progress. And one thing I want to say is, every nation in the world, the nations that we make references to, whether you're talking about Singapore or United Arab Emirates, whether you're talking about Malaysia or South Korea, whether you're talking about India or Indonesia and the rest of them, right? Not even talk about America and the United Kingdom and the rest of them. All of these nations were deliberately constructed to be the way they are today. None of these nations developed by accident. Absolutely none of them. It was, these nations are the outcomes of a visionary leadership, extremely disciplined leaders who had the welfare and the well-being of their citizens at heart, who were concerned about their place, the place of their country and their people under the sun. These nations were not developed by mediocres. These nations were not developed by ethnic irredentists. These nations were not developed by kleptomaniacs. These nations were developed by patriots, highly disciplined, values-driven, ethically conscious humans. That is how these nations emerged. Nigeria cannot be different. No nation can develop by accident. So for me, it's very simple. I want a secure Nigeria. I want a country that is equitable. I want a country that treats its citizens equally. I want a country that will focus on its great human capital, our young people, that will give our people a chance to be the best. It is significant to my mind that when Nigerians have found their way outside the country, most of them who are educated get to the top, to the excellence of their profession. And yet the foundations were laid in our home country. It shows clearly that something is very, very wrong. I want a nation where if I showed up at any border anywhere else in the world, I can bring out my green passport with pride without anybody profiling me. That is the nation that I want. Clearly, this does not exist today. I don't want a nation where, each time you show up and you mention this country's name, you're like the joke, the butt of jokes. We're the poverty capital of the world, okay? I don't want a nation where our citizens are attacked routinely. Whether it's in South Africa, in Liberia, Sierra Leone, our citizens are attacked. Our embassies are invaded at will in Ghana, in South Africa. It's because the reason is very simple. We are not what we should be. We are weak. We're perceived as weak. It's common knowledge that we're weak. So the nation is disrespected. Our citizens are not respected. All of this will have to change in order for me to continue to remain a proud Nigerian. This will be my comments.
Wow, I really felt that. And I obviously connect with that. When you talk about the way we're not maximizing the strong human capital potential and just the brain drain in Nigeria. And I remember in 2017, when I relocated back to Nigeria, I had a lot of friends that relocated back. We were all fired up. By the end of the year, I think 90 to 95% of them have moved back. They said, you know what, this is not the place for me. And some of them still wonder if I'm crazy to say still staying back. So I mean, if we must remain here and if we must be proud of the nation, we definitely need to fix our governance, our politics. We need to fix, you know, this structural, economical, political, and, you know, just all the issues that, you know, we have in the country right now. So I'm going to go to you, Mr. Alder. Mr. Wiki has set the scene for us. He's obviously talked about the ranges of problems that we have in the country. He's talked about, you know, he said he wants a Nigeria that is secure. And I really think that is not too much for a citizen to ask for. I think that's very important. Just saying we want to be safe so that we can have a quality of life that we desire as a nation. To you, I'd like to get your interpretation on the topic for today, the Nigeria we want, because I think this is going to set a context for the wider conversation I'm going to have with both yourself and Mr. Onweke. I think you have to mute yourself, Mr. Alder. Could you please unmute yourself?
Okay, now sorry about that. Well, I was saying that, колег, thank you very much for inviting me to speak at this conference, and it's an honor. For me, it's very simple. The Nigeria we want is a Nigeria we don't currently have. It's a very simple definition of word and opposite. And we need to go to the root causes, because if we're not careful, we're dealing with symptoms rather than the root causes. Nigeria is plagued by illogicalities, and that's why I call the nation federated illogicality. And there are three forms of illogicality. The first one is the conceptual illogicality. The second one is the demographic illogicality, and the third one is religious illogicality. Federated illogicality in the sense that we're supposed to be a federation, but we operate more like a unitary system. So we run a one-cap-fits-all policy system that does not take into cognizance the capabilities, the nativism, the geography, or the inclination of the people, you know, in the different regions and everything. And therefore, we can't maximize our economic strength. Nigeria is one of the richest nations on earth. There are more mineral resources here than in any other country that I know of. Canada has only 5 natural resources and is considered the mineral destination of the world. Nigeria has about 66 mineral resources, or at 50 to 56, depending on what you are counting, and we are poor. So there's a problem, there's a conceptual incongruity in which a nation that should be running full steam on steroids is running like the famous tortoise in all the African folktales. The second one is the demographic illogicality, and there are 61.3 million Nigerians aged between 19 and 35, yet they are totally underrepresented in government. How is it possible that 33% of the federation is not represented in government? And let me cite some statistics to you so that you'll understand the incredulity that I have concerning where we are right now. 1966 was a pivotal year in Nigeria. In that year, let me read out the ages of all the current actors or those who have affected the country. Chukwuma Nzegu was 29 in 1966. Ademoyega was 32. Murtala Mohammed of blessed memory was 28. Theophilus Danjuma was 28. Abba Kyari was 28. Muhammad Buhari was 24. Ibrahim Babangida was 25. Mamman Vatsa was 26. Sani Abacha was 23. Shagaya was 24. Ojukwu was 33. Olusegun Obasanjo was 29. Emmanuel Ifeanyi was 32. Mohamed Gadon Nasco was 25. Abdullahi Sheleng was 24. So how is it possible that 20-something-year-olds and 30-something-year-olds were ruling the country in 1966, but in the year 2021 or 2020 onwards, you know, we have people that are 70-something, 80-something. How is it going to work? There are no fresh ideas. So we need to, you know, address that challenge. The third illogicality that I find is what I call religious illogicality. How is it possible that Nigerians pray to God for something that common sense can solve? You know, I just don't get it. So if you look at all this logicality, you'll understand why we're where they were. Now, I'm going to talk later about the breakdown of the mineral resources of the country, because the poverty that we have in, let me read out some statistics on poverty for you. It will alarm you. Sokoto, the poverty rate is 87.7%. Taraba, 87.7%. Jigawa, 87%. Adamawa 75.4%, Zamfara 74%, Yobe 72.3%, Niger 66.1%, Gombe 62.3%, Bauchi 61.2%, Enugu 58.1%, and we are surprised that we have insecurity. If 8 or 9 out of 10 people in a state are poor, how is it possible that we are surprised that there's insecurity? And something is just wrong in our thinking, in our policies, and this idea that you can have a one-cap-fits-all policy for the entire federation, which does not make our energy policy is wrong. How is it possible that you have the same energy policy for a place that is drenched in sunlight, like in the north, with the same energy policies that in a place that is drenched with water, like in the south? It just doesn't make sense. Now, here's the problem, and I'm going to break on this. Here's the poverty statistics and why the poverty statistics is so bad. If you break Nigeria into 5 regional zones, economic zones, you're going to find out that the north has more minerals than the south. The north has 31 mineral resources. If you look at the middle belt, that's 23 mineral resources. If you look at the southeast, it has only 9 resources. If you look at the southwest, it has 18 mineral resources. And if you look at the south, it has 30 mineral resources. In other words, there's poverty in the midst of plenty. And that is because we are running illogical policies, and Nigeria is a federated illogicality. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Aldo, for setting, that context and giving us that very thought-provoking data. As you said, how can we have so much poverty in the land of plenty and amidst all this economic and social resources that we have? And so obviously that is a question that we must analyze today to understand those root causes. Where do we go from here? But before I come back to you, I can see that Professor Shonaya is back. Welcome, Prof. While Mr. Aldo was speaking, he mentioned, the inequalities when it comes to youth representation in politics. In 2010, you voluntarily left the academia to focus on politics, which is, very inspiring, than becoming the first female presidential candidate under Coa's party. From where you sit, from being involved in the political climate and just how things have either retrogressed or maybe progressed from then, what is your context when it comes to the Nigeria we want?
Thank you very much. And again, let me say a big thank you to колег for inviting me to participate in this very, very important conversation. The theme for this occasion actually reminds me of the period before the French Revolution. The king then, Louis XVI, asked the people to make a list of their grievances and present to him. This was like just March to April in 1789. And the people actually did the 3 estates of the French society. So the nobility, the clergy, and then the common people, all of them, they made their requests known and presented to the king. And he held a special session to consider their requests. Now, why this reminds me, why today's theme of the Nigeria we want reminds me of that, is that basically what we're doing is to list our grievances. And we are hoping that the removal of these grievances would lead to the Nigeria we want. I've listened to Mr. Nweke and Mr. Alda, and what they have done is to let us know these are the things that we do not want. Therefore, you flip that on its head and you get what we want. We want a society that is secure and so on. The question, however, is we. Who are the we? You see, when France had its list of grievances outlined, in 1789, all the desires were not the same. The nobility were talking about rights to hunting and things like that, you know, whereas other sectors were talking about overtaxing and so on. So on whose side, who are the we? That was the first thing I asked myself. And I'm saying the we here that I am identifying with is, let's call that person, you know, that group of people, the ordinary Nigerians. Because apparently there are some that are feeding fat on this, you know, serious situation that we have, on these incongruities that Mr. Alder just talked about. You know, so what do we want as a regular Nigerians who are not part of the political class? I would say that we want a modern society. I would like to put that forward. We want a modern society, and one that is anchored on one, political restructuring, which is what you have directed at me, the question you directed at me specifically. We want a politically restructured nation, and we want a modern society riveted on education. A politically restructured nation would be more inclusive of everybody. You see, I know what I do not want going forward in 2023. I do not want to see anybody who has been a part of putting us in this mess in government anymore. Personally, I do not want to see that. I would like to see more people like you in government, Ms. Faborode. I would like to see vibrant young women taking positions of leadership and responsibility in our country. I want a modern society where people are educated. Mr. Alder reeled out the statistics about poverty. The fact is that we have states where over 60% of the young men have no schooling at all. 60%, that is disaster. That is absolute disaster. Because then we need not wonder why we have all these attacks and, you know, armed attacks on people and so on. When people have not been to school, it marks them in a negative way. So I would like to see a Nigeria where the people go to school from 6 to 15 years of age, which is what we have in our law. We have this thing about signing conventions, you know, saying we agree with this, having things written in our laws that are not in any way put into practice. I want all the girls in school. I do not want child marriage. I do not want the lives of people, of young children, expended taking care of somebody else. You know, each time I see a young child leading around maybe a lame person, you know, wheeling them in a wheelchair, or leading around a blind man or something, what comes to my mind is one life is being sacrificed at the, for another. Why should that be? Why should that be? So these are some of the changes that we would like to see in our society. And this being a legal gathering, I would like to ask the lawyers there. You know, I'm just a linguist, so pardon me. I'd like to ask the lawyers, is it right? Is it just to inflict the pain on our society of having maybe so many people punished with amputation? When somebody commits an offense and you chop off both of their arms, are you punishing just that one individual, or are you punishing the society? It's an issue I would like to leave with this body. You know, because we then inflict pain. That person cannot feed themselves, cannot, you know, wash themselves, cannot go to the toilet and clean themselves and so on. Is that the kind of burden we want our society to bear? I know my thoughts are running riot here, but these are some of the issues, you know, that we are confronted with. I want a society that does not expel its young people, that does not send them into the Sahara Desert, that does not swallow up its own people. You know, so I think I can take a break here for now, but you know, these are some of the issues that are of concern to the ordinary Nigerian, I believe.
Thank you so much, Professor. I think, you know, that was very profound. And today, indeed, if we're talking about the Nigeria we want, we definitely cannot leave out the issue of social injustice and how that impacts on, you know, the development of the nation or the socio-economic progression of the country in totality. We have another poll launching right about now before I delve deeper into the conversation. So if the team can please pop that up on the screen so that we can proceed with the conversation, that would be great. Can we please have the second poll? Okay, whilst they're working on that, I will just go straight to the rest of my of the conversation. Mr. Weke, when I asked you, okay, so we have the poll, please endeavor to answer these questions. I think it's very important. And if you have any comments on, you know, some of the choices or some of the options not really aligning with some of your present concerns, I think you can use the chat box as well, just given the long ranges of problems that we have in the country as well. Mr. Weke, I mean, when I posed the question about the Nigeria you want, you mentioned that you want to secure Nigeria, but you also mentioned that you wanted a country that is equitable. There's been a controversial discussion, you know, in the space. So obviously, people are beginning to talk about what's happened in the banking sector, where you've actually had the emergence of female CEOs, and you actually seen, you know, just a lot more women, you know, get into the boardroom or rise to the elms of affair. A school of thought says this is some form of tokenism, and another school of thought says, well, you know, let's pick on those little wins, let's replicate it. I would like to get your take on that, you know, just because you actually mentioned, you know, that point on equity. And I think the complementary question to that will be, where does gender equality fit in a nation's plan for development and social justice? And then can you suggest how gender equality can be instilled or improved, you know, across board and also replicated in governance as well? I know that's a packed question, but I'll let you do it.
That's a mouthful right there. First of all, my profound, again, thanks to Mr. Alder and to Professor Shania for the very profound insights that they provided on the theme of this conversation. Now, it's very helpful. I would have loved to touch on a few things, but let me focus on your question. Now, first of all, I am one of those. I'm very big on women. You know, I'm a feminist of sorts. And I say this because, you know, my sense is if these women are good enough to be our mothers, these women are good enough to be our girlfriends, our wives, our sisters, our daughters, why do we think that these women are not good enough to provide leadership? It doesn't make sense to me again. And I have to depend on my dear brother and friend, to Mr. Alder, to tell me, to help me frame the illogicality of it all, right? I have to depend on him to help me frame the illogicality of it all. But seriously speaking, let us look at, say, the woman, right? And the role that they play in the perpetuation of the species, right? The role they play in sustaining society. And so you find a woman who, again, from conception, develops a very profound relationship with this fetus in her womb, right? You have a woman who suffers through, just think of the mental courage, the physical and emotional courage required to go through 9 months of gestation, of pregnancy. And then you birth this child. When you have birthed, when this child has been birthed, then the next thing is this woman takes responsibility for nurturing that child. Not just that child in the early years and everything. Now, as cheeky as this might sound, myself and my other male compatriots, the job has been finished 9 months earlier. You're on your way. But this woman continues to bear that burden. And then through childhood, schooling and everything. In most homes, all of us on this call know that it is the woman who stays awake at night, who changes the diapers, who makes sure that child feeds. When the child is ill, she's going to sleep in hospital and everything. Why am I saying all this? I'm saying all of this to say that our mothers, our wives, our female compatriots deserve tremendous, greater respect, much more than we currently give them. And therefore, it is important, in my view, that society recognizes the very unique opportunity that we have, okay, to really deploy our female resources, our mothers' resources, the resources that are in our wives, to really help to order how society evolves, how society develops. It is, if I were to use myself as an example, when I was Minister for Youth Development, one of the things that I used to talk about was I tried to reconstruct my own childhood and the role that my mother played. It's my mother that knows when I return home with the shoe that I didn't go to school with. She was the one that knows when the ruler that I came back with is not the one that I went with. She was the one that knew when you know, I just listen, you can't go out that way. She was the one that made sure that uniforms and everything, all of these things were in order. And there were times when she would march back to, you know, back to school with me to tell the teacher that no, this is not what we're talking about. So I could go on and on and on and on. So I resent a situation where, you know, we merely patronize our women, right? We merely patronize them. So, but again, you know, never despise humble beginnings. I believe that the emergence of female CEOs in the banks, for whatever the consideration is a good thing, because I believe that it sends the right signals. It also inspires young people. It also tells you that, you know, it's like breaking the so-called glass ceiling, right? And it's very important. But it will also be good where we, again, deliberately, consciously, on an ongoing basis, even within the polity, where we deliberately create opportunity for the women to also emerge as, you know, parliamentarians, as senators, as ministers. I mean, this happened a lot under President Obasanjo. It was deliberately constructed that way. And that's the point that I made. So whether you're talking about an Obi Ezekwesili, whether you are talking about an Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, whether you're talking about a Nana Usman, whether you're talking about a Chief Grace Akpan, whether you're talking about Mrs. Oshomo, these were some of my colleagues in the cabinet. These women were deliberately identified, were deliberately empowered to really provide leadership in the public sector. So none of these things can happen by accident. And I believe it is something that we should continue to do, not just because of balance, but because it is sensible, it is wise, and it is pragmatic to empower almost over 50% of your population to really participate in public governance.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nweke. It is sensible, it is wise, and it is pragmatic. I will take those words with me, and I must seek your permission that I will use them, just so you know. So I'm not sued for copyright. That's a joke. But thank you very much. I think for me, it's so fundamental to have male champions and men as allies. As we go through this painstaking journey of advocating for why half of the population are excluded from decision-making in the country. And I think, it's not rocket science that definitely has had very dire socioeconomic implications on the growth and the development of Nigeria. Dr. Shonaya, Professor Shonaya, excuse me, my apologies.
No problem.
We cannot talk about politics, obviously, without bringing you in, because that is something you passionately champion. That is something that is mirrored in your total being. I mean, in 2015, you were the first female presidential candidate. And I think that is, that was a very defining period for a lot of people. And, this also obviously shaped your experience. So you've been in this space, you understand that. Before I come to you, I just want, for the benefit of some of the people that are listening on this conversation, I just want to share some data that I think that, a lot of people should reflect on and start asking themselves, what kind of Nigeria do I want? So at the moment, at the parliament where policies are formulated and key decisions that affect my life and your life, that really should push for the Nigeria that we want. At the moment, you have 7 or 8 female senators out of 109, and then you have just about 11 female House of Representative members out of 360, which means at the arms of affair where decisions and policies are made, there is inequality. There's the lack of equity, which means there are no balanced ideas, which means society is not reflected in how we're governed or in decision making. And obviously, that has its own implications as well. Please, if you have any questions, drop your questions in the Q&A chat box so that our panelists can attend to them. And if you want to direct any particular questions to any of the panelists, please also direct that to them as well. I'm sure they will respond. Professor Shonaya, you are so passionate about, women, and you advocate for the rights of women very passionately. It is easy to assume that people know why we should have women in politics. Why should we have women in politics? Why is it so fundamental as we talk about the Nigeria that we want? Why is this discussion very pertinent at this very defining time in our history? More so because we're going to the polls in 2023 for another general election that will determine the next 4 years, which is also the political cycle, the social cycle in the country as well. So when talking about the Nigeria we want from the economic, from the political and the social justice perspective, how do women matter in the bigger picture?
Thank you very much. This is such an important issue for us to talk about. And I'd really like to thank my brother, Frank Nweke, because he has already made a very passionate, I won't want to call it a plea, but he has established for us the role that women play, not only in the home, but even in society as well. Nigeria must think about it. Why is it that we can have women sit on boards, women like Dr. Mrs. Ibukunwa Woshika, be on a board of a bank? Why do we have women who can be professors, who can be judges, and so on? What are they lacking in that they are not fit for political leadership? And that is why, again, I talked about wanting a modern society. Because I believe that some of these positions are just too rooted in some traditional, cultural straitjackets that people have constructed for themselves and are unwilling, to face up to the current reality. People change. That's the reality. I mean, we used to kill twins in Nigeria, didn't we? Now we have stopped killing them because, we realize that, hey, twins are human beings too. It is a reality that we must confront headlong. And I like your point about engaging or having, male advocates for this position come alongside us and help to make this point to our men folk. The reality, I believe, is that those who have their hands on the how would I say it? On the purse or inside the purse of Nigeria so far, they are unwilling to let go. They are unwilling to let go even to younger people, for younger people, because the stakes are so high. And maybe if we lowered the stakes, maybe we might begin, therefore, that's why I advocate, for politics, remuneration in politics, not being so high, so that we can begin to have people who have a mind to serve. And when we do have that, then we will see that, women will also have opportunities. Because definitely when it comes to merit, when it comes to competence, we find that women are well able to complete. There's no doubt about that. It's only because in politics, we have not evolved a system that is focused on competence, on capability, or on personal character and so on. When that becomes the focus, we will find that our women, will be there. So this is very important. And just one more point that I would like to make. To bring this about, that is why some of us are advocating for some fundamental changes in our constitution. I'm part of a group now called the Fix Politics Initiative. And we are asking, we have started a change.org petition to request that Nigerians be given the right to a referendum in our constitution, so that we would have a bigger say in the way that our affairs are being run. And I am certain that if today we put this thing to a vote, if Nigerians were to be asked, would you like to see more women in positions of political leadership, it is going to be an overwhelming yes. Because many of our regular people recognize the important role that female teachers, that mothers, as Mr. Weke has said, and so on, have in their lives. And they are ready to have competent women, get into governance positions in this country.
Thank you very much, President Shunaya. So I'm going to come to you, Mr. Alder. And when you spoke about the three logicalities, so the federated, the demographic, and the religious, I just thought that beautifully captured the wicked problems we have in Nigeria. Because one of my lecturers, we always say Nigeria has a very wicked problems, and I think you really put that very aptly. So given the current context of this, of the peculiarity of these challenges that we have, and I mean, you rightfully said it, we still run, you know, a federated economy, and that also reflects in policies and decision making as well. But also looking at the diversity in our demographic, and also the distribution of wealth across the nation, access to economic resources, access to social resources, human capital, just a lot of those, you know, different points coming together. What would you say? How would you say? I mean, what would you say the nation needs to do? What does government need to prioritize? How do decision makers, policy makers need to start rethinking their approach to policy making, their approach to development, you know? Mr. Nweke once said, he said, we need a governance structure that is development centric. So perhaps that is a missing, you know, in how, you know, we actually politic or govern the country today. So based on the illogicalities that you've listed, you know, what do we do? Where do we go from here, from your point of view?
Okay, well, thank you once more, and thank you to my fellow panelists for throwing a lot of light on the issues at hand. But I'm a realistic person and I'm a very pragmatic person. And what has happened is that the system that is running is locked against the youth. You're not going to get anything done because it's locked up. There's godfatherism, there's a lot of money. Let me give you an example. In order for you to run a presidential campaign, and I should know because I've run campaigns, you need, for the polling units alone, to man your polling units, you need at least 59 billion naira. Where are the youths going to get that kind of crazy money? And where should anybody get that kind of crazy money in a country that is destitute and is short of funds? So I would say that you need to change the rules of competition. You need to change the rules of the game before you can unlock the future. And how do you change the rules of the game? Change the voting system. If I were the youth, there's only one thing I will campaign for going forward, until we get it, we're not going to stop. Get Nigeria to start voting by phones. Get Nigerians to start voting by phones. What that does is that it frees the people from the tyranny of the political parties. It frees the people to go and do real election, in the sense that I'm not afraid of political godfathers. I'm not afraid of crooks and touts. I'm not afraid of the result being changed. I'm not afraid of anything going on. I'm not afraid of any.
I think we've lost Mr. Alder. Mr. Alder, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Sorry, that's part of the problems. Okay. My network is tripping off. Okay. Okay, so what I'm saying is that if you change the voting, and they're going to tell you it's not possible. You know, anything that will take power away from the people and give to the youths, they're going to tell you it's impossible. But Big Brother, the cumulative votes of 170 million, that's about the population of Nigeria, isn't it? Yeah. And the finals, there were 33 million votes. That is more than enough to elect a president in a country. So if you get the people, and the technology is already there, we're not going to invent any new technology. Apple already has iris technology, link it up to BVN, and you have verification. Then we want live verification centers. We want to see live collation centers. The same way that, just imagine that you are voting, and it's like a Twitter poll. You are seeing the results live in live, you know, live in a live session and everything. Why can't it be done? And they're going to tell you it's impossible, it can be hacked. But the current system, which is analog, is being hacked. I'm saying that the youth must campaign to bring their culture. You see, when my generation defines culture, it's a retrogressive concept. Whereas culture is supposed to be dynamic. Culture is forward-facing. Technology brings culture. So campaign for something that favors you because you are technology masters. My generation doesn't understand technology. Therefore, if you want to beat them, campaign for technology change. If you don't do that, you are going to be looking for the money that is defined by their system. And most of that money comes from the state anyway. So how do you campaign against this? How do you compete against the state? You're not going to. So put it at the front burner. We want voting by phone. The telephonic penetration in Nigeria is high, is over 90%. The people that you send money to in the village receive by phone. So the village people can vote by phone if they want. Okay, even if they won't agree, why don't you say, let's do test runs in Lagos, in Port Harcourt, in Enugu, or any of the centers first, and let's see how this thing works, and then we perfect the system. So that's what I'm going to ask the youth to do, because every other thing is predicated on the security that comes from the fact that you know that you cannot be voted at and you can rig your way in no matter what, and you can terrorize the people. Even all this gender equality that we're talking about, if you get the people to vote by phones and the women show up in their numbers and they can do it in 1 or 2 minutes, I am telling you, everything will change. Change the system. If you want to compete against Goliath, change the rules of the game. Don't throw javelin, don't play sword like him because it's more experienced than you. Use a sling. Stay far off, fire your sling and let it sink into the forehead. That is the way to go.
Well, that was indeed very thought-provoking. Thank you so much, Mr. Oda. I think that was a very profound contributions, and I really hope that колег can sort of do some recommendations based off those conversations, and we hope the right people would listen. You mentioned the adoption of technology and deployment of technology, in politics and in governance as well. We know what's been happening in the tech space, where there's been a lot of crackdown, where there's been hard regulations, and a lot of players in that ecosystem are currently having it really tough because they feel like they just have their hands tied by government policies. Within the current context, so I like the fact that you're very realistic, you're very pragmatic. Well, as I said earlier, Nigeria has a wicked problem, which means we can't fix these problems in one day, but there's also a current reality. So how do we get around the current reality? I want us to talk about practical solutions. While a lot of things are still determined by the states, where a lot of regulations, are still brought forward by the state, what can independent players in the space do to revolutionize the system you're talking about, or actually also improve on the deployment of technology, just like they've done across the banking or other sectors as well? I mean, mobile money is huge in Nigeria. Like I said, telecoms penetration is about 90%. So, but it's been really pushed by the private sector. So I think my question is, what can independent players do to really move things? We can't wait for the government to fix everything. So what is the approach? What approach should be embarked on by different stakeholders, but most importantly, the independent players or private sector partners as well? That's to you, Mr. Aldo.
It's really very simple. In a democracy, it's a game of numbers. The youths have the numbers. The problem is that those numbers have not been used strategically. So why don't the youths have the money? I'm talking effective money. I'm not talking about stupid money or senseless money. And you saw that during the NSAS protest. You saw how money was mobilized and it was used effectively. So a lot of waste was cut out. There was transparency and all those things. Why don't the youths identify certain critical positions and identify people who should run for those positions and back those candidates with the money that they have? Because you see, unless you change the policymaker, you can't change the policies. And it's in the interest of the policymaker to come up with policies that entrench his position, because nobody wants to give up power. In Africa, power is not a means, it is an end. It's just an end. It's not about the people, it's not about the youths, it's not about the concerns, it's not even about the nation. It's about self. So identify, sit down at a round table, identify who will run for office and which positions you are targeting. You may not even go for president or any of those things now. Just be strategic and say that in 10 years' time, we're going to take over this nation. In 5 years' time, we're going to take over this nation. And that's how these things function. That's how it runs. So unless you sit down and put good
Okay, I think we have lost Mr. Aldo for a minute. But before it comes back, I think, it touched on something extremely important, which is, what do we have now as the youth, which is that tech infrastructure and also that coordination that we can leverage on. And the NSAS protest also, was an expose into how people can actually coordinate themselves and seek for alternative means of financing as well. And I'm really hoping that, we can leverage that come the next general elections. I think I must also say that this was one of the inspirations to actually starting our organization, elig, where we are just focused on trying to get women elected. And the goal is that, obviously, through crowdfunding, we can actually identify young women, competent women that can run for office and back them with the social, political, technological, and financial capital that they want. Let me come to you, Mr. Nweke. I mean, you served as CEO of the Nigeria Economic Summit Group. You work closely with different stakeholders, with the government. You're heavily involved in some of this policy frameworks, or some of these national plans that are developed, by different administrations. Nigeria doesn't lack, policies on paper. The question is, how do we start pushing for implementation and accountability? What do we need to do? Bearing in mind some of these illogicalities that, Mr. Alder mentioned as well. But given that you've played in this space where you've advised, at the state level, at the federal level, on some of these policy reforms, what exactly is the problem? And if we have this documentation, if we have this, this policies on paper, why are we not implementing them? And what can we do to fix, this issues that we're facing now?
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, okay, so I think it was in August, or was it in September, that I was speaking to course participants of the Senior Executive Course 43 at the Nigerian Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies. And I was talking to them about the economics of policy making and how to really focus on implementation. As you rightly pointed out, Nigeria does not have a policy problem. Nigeria has a people's problem. Nigeria has a people's problem. So there's absolutely nothing under the sun for which Nigeria does not have the right policy framework and document for. The question is, as you pointed out, why is it that in spite of the existence of these policy instruments and frameworks, we continue not to get things right? The answer is very simple. It comes down to our politics. It comes down to our politics. It is this politics, the structure of it, the nature of it, the kind of thing that Mr. Alder has described, that determines the quality of leaders that emerge. And it is the quality of leaders that emerge that then determine the quality of your education sector and the outcomes, the policy of your health sector and the outcomes, the policy of your technology policy, your innovation policy, your security policy, your economic policy, and all of these things are anchored on the quality of your politics, the leadership, all these things are tied in there. So the question is that simple, right? Change or improve the quality of the politics, and you can expect to see changes in the quality of policy outcomes across sectors. That is the main challenge. Let us look at what Mr. Alder was talking about. Look at Nigeria's youth population. Just look at the youth demographics in this country, right? And then you ask yourself, how is it possible that in a country where you have about almost 200 million people, let's assume that about 120 of voting age, but Nigeria had never managed to register up to half of its population that is of voting age. It's always fluctuated between, say, 45 and 48%. Nigeria has never managed to do this. Now, in the last presidential election, right, President Muhammadu Buhari was elected by less than 16 million people, right, out of the almost 80-something million people that were registered or supposedly registered to vote. What does that say? And so it is extremely important that there's a deliberate and conscious effort to really encourage people, for citizens, to really understand the role they have to play as citizens. In fixed politics, for which I'm co-chair, Professor Shonaya is also involved in this initiative, right? My job, or our job, is to emerge or endeavor to emerge an educated, enlightened, and informed, empowered electorate, right? Because we understand, as you've said, these wicked problems can only be solved by the mass of the people. The political elites are finite, but when you look at the mass of the people, they are not engaged. Because they're not engaged, the outcomes that are more favorable to the political elite is what always emerges at the end of elections. And so then we start complaining. You have a situation where people say, no, votes don't count, right? And I can't think of anything more foolish, really, for you to say that votes don't count. If votes don't count, then make them count. So the problem, to my mind, is that the consciousness that is required on the part of Nigerian citizens, okay, to really bring about the kind of change that we would like to see is lacking at the moment. Is lacking, and all hands need to be on deck to really encourage, whether it's your family, your children, your community, your estate, your whatever, people must be encouraged to get involved in the political process. If we don't get involved in the political process, we cannot see the change that we want. So you have good people who come out. So Professor Shonaya wants to be president. Tell me, Ms. Fabarode, is she not qualified to be president of Nigeria, given the kinds of things we're contending with now? You have so many people. Obieze Ekwesili wanted to be president. Is she not qualified? Okay, and there are many people out there that are eminently qualified, but you have citizens who will not come out to register to vote, or they register to vote, they don't come out to vote, or they vote, they do not protect their votes. It doesn't make sense at all. Look at what happened in Anambra recently. You have a governor who's been elected by less than 200,000 people in a place where you have over 2 million registered voters. Does it make sense? And then the people complain that they don't like what is going on, right? So as a matter of fact, I'm going to rest the case here that leadership and followership is shared responsibility. People must understand it. People have to understand it. People must understand it, that there's something that they must also understand, which is that sovereignty resides with the people. There's only a president because there's a country called Nigeria and there are people for him to preside over. The president should not be more powerful than the people, right? And I say this, what do I mean? If the people were to bunch together, like the kind of thing that happened during EndSARS, I mean, there was panic everywhere. The political elite, some of them went under their mother's beds. They hid away, they ran away because they saw that people, the citizens suddenly sort of got a sense of, oh, wow, this sovereignty resides with us. This sovereignty is in our hands. And they moved and they all scampered away. If it is possible to build on this, not to destroy things, but to engage responsibly, to engage in the electoral process, you'll be amazed at the kind of change and the impact that we can have in Nigeria.
I cannot, I mean, as you were speaking just now, there's just a feeling, it's just really great to hear, just someone like you who's going through private sector, public sector, speak to the issues like this. I've been struggling not to go too deep into the political conversation during the course of this conversation, trying to stay, just say, let's talk about the economic bits a bit. But the truth is, without fixing our politics, to borrow from yourself and Professor, nothing can be done. And I think it's time that the private sector and all stakeholders, started getting on board. Mr. Aldo, before you went up, you were talking about youth involvement and how we need to leverage, the youth culture to actually get people elected, to mobilize resources, towards actually getting the right people. And you said something profound, Mr. Enrique. You said leadership and followership is shared responsibility, and sovereign resides with the people. Absolutely. So I think that we cannot deviate when we want to talk about socioeconomic advancement or inclusion. We cannot deviate from that political conversation. And I think it's so important for especially the elites and the private sector to start getting comfortable with talking about politics when we have such discussions. Because I think for so long, we've tried to separate these things, saying, okay, you know what, people that politic, they're just politicians. However, we want to focus on the economy. But there is no economy without politics, because like I said, leadership and followership is shared responsibility. I want to go on with the conversation because I feel like, this is a very multifaceted conversation. We're touching on economic, political, and social justice, and I'm just getting excited already, but I'm going to go into the chat box. I think we have some questions. Some of them have been addressed, but I'm going to read just one or two. And then I'm going to come back to you with closing statements and maybe some of the conversations you've not been able to touch on, or some of the questions that I've not been able to ask, or some of the burning points that you think are very pertinent to the discussions we have today. Adeyemi Agbelusi says, can you examine the role of true federalism, rule of law, merit, and moral values in creating a society that works for all? I would leave that open to anyone that wants to answer it.
Okay, so I'll just try to speak about that very, very briefly. But this is not my closing statement, is it?
No, it's not. Absolutely not.
There's something I needed to point out. Okay, so the gentleman whoever posed that question raises very, very fundamental questions. And now I'm going to talk about, I'm just going to throw it back to all of us, right? Okay. Now, I am very, very big on parental responsibility, without meaning to diminish in any way whatsoever the role that government has to play in the maintenance of law and order in society, right? I believe very strongly that parents have an important role to play in how society evolves, right? Either values driven or ethically driven, that parents have a very important role to play. And so that if each of us would play our role as fathers, as mothers, as families in trying to nurture children and prepare them for engagement with the largest, starting with the complex where they live, to their community, and then to school, and then to the larger society, that we can have a much better place, right? Again, I go back to what I said at the beginning. No society would make progress by accident. The same way, children cannot just behave themselves simply because you wish it. You're the one that's good. No, you can't drop this trash there. No, you have to be respectful to this person. No, you have to be clean. No, you have to do this, you have to do that. It's a deliberate. My father wrote me letters, and today my sons, my children suffer, in quote, in terms of 8-page letters, 10-page letters, depending on what the issue is, just reminding them, pointing things out to them, the way my father before me did it, right? And so today they know that there are certain things that are totally unacceptable. As a serving cabinet minister, my father wrote me letters reminding me of what will happen if I did certain things, and encouraging me to be true to my nurture, What am I saying in essence? When we look at what is happening in our polity as Nigeria, right? The high levels of corruption, the high levels of immorality, the high levels of just bad behavior that we see, right? It's always tempting to say, oh, government should have done this, government should have done that. I agree completely. But the more fundamental responsibility, as far as I'm concerned, resides with parents from the beginning. The Bible says, teach the child the path in which you want him to grow. in his old age, he will not depart from it. This is so fundamental. There are still some children that are very, you have told them everything, but they make choices that, embarrass you ultimately. But that does not in any way exculpate parents, all of us, from responsibility for the way society evolves and for what eventually happens ultimately in the larger society, right? So that's my response to the dimension that the question sort of provoked just now.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, so from David Ijashin, so he says to Professor Sochonaya, excuse me, what are the factors that influence Nigerians voting patterns, interest, and choice of candidate? A comparison of the state of economy, political leadership, corruption, foreign policies, foreign exchange before 2015 and 2019 political elections showed no significant difference, yet Nigerians voted in the same administration.
Thank you, Mr. Jashim, for that question. We all know that stomach infrastructure counts a great deal, okay? People sell and buy votes. We do know that, but I'm very, very happy about what Mr. Nweke just said, about the proportion of people who end up, electing those who are in government, 10%, stuff like that. It's ridiculous. That means we have 90% still to work with. Imagine if all of those decided, to do something differently, then things will start to change. So certainly, stomach infrastructure, of course, ethnicity and religious sentiments, this person is from my area or, has the same religion as I do. Also, we know that Nigerians do not like, they tell themselves, I don't want to waste my vote. I don't want to waste my vote by voting for somebody who is not likely to win. It turns out to be a self-fulfilling prophecy because you do not want to waste your vote, so you keep voting for that same person who has made your life, a horror. Oh, but because it belongs to a big party, they're the ones who are likely, to win. So you keep voting for them and not wasting your vote. That's why also I had earlier spoken about education. Honestly, we are not making well-informed choices. It's in fact like we are the ones putting our own necks in the noose and asking for it to be tightened. So I think it is time for us truly to begin to be analytical, to begin to be rational about our choices for elections. To examine people. We know many of these people. We know their character. Why do we keep voting for people who have clear records of either fraud or even a criminal record and so on? Why? Are those the values that we would like to see in the people who are going to lead us? So these are very important issues for us. We must be dispassionate about all these ethnicity and religion and so on. We need people with character. We need people with competence. Those should begin to be the requirements that we take into consideration before we make our choices. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I apologize for my dog barking in the background there. It's choosing to harass me. I mean, I know we've covered quite a lot, and there's still a lot more to cover, to be honest. But just give me a minute, please. I apologize for that. We've covered quite a lot today, and there's just so much more to cover. And I think, just to ensure that this is a very balanced conversation, I would now give each panelist, the opportunity to share their final thoughts. Mr. Wike, I know that you said there was something you wanted to touch on. So I'm going to start with you, as we try to round up the conversation.
Okay, again, thank you so much. My profound thanks. I mean, it's, I didn't expect anything less, having Professor Shania and then of course having Mr. Alder on this. Regrettably, Mr. Woshika, I'm sure would have really had, a real nuclear submission. Regrettably, she dropped off. Now, the point I want to make is just, I'm going to summarize, right? Again, I want us to go away being mindful that no nation can develop by accident. And secondly, on conversations like this, right, I like to keep it very simple. Because at the end of the day, what does this thing mean for the ordinary people? So you and I, with all the education and everything, we're speaking. And there's the tendency for us to speak above the heads of ordinary people sometimes, right? So for me, if you're talking about the Nigeria we want, economic, political, and social justice, right? So if you find someone who is unemployed out there, what is justice for this person? This person wants to be able to eat. Well, this person wants to be able to have 3 square meals. That is it. All the grammar, that is the cocoa of the matter, as they say. This person wants to be able to eat. When you have a mother who is nursing, right? And who has no work and no means of livelihood, nothing, and these children need to be fed. What does that woman want? That woman wants some empowerment, something that will help her be productive to be able to take care of those children. If you have somebody who is homeless, what does social justice and political and economic justice mean to such a person? It is a shelter over their head. We need to be clear about it. And so if you're asking that person the Nigeria that he or she wants, that person will probably tell you, I want a Nigeria where I can have a roof over my head so that I'm not at the mercy of the elements with my children. So if you're looking at, say, look at our military, for instance, right? You'll be amazed when you interact with some of them, the kind of conditions under which they serve. This might sound controversial. How do you know all of that? You have people, relatives, friends who are out there. For them, justice will be that, look, even if I am going to die, let me die, fighting. And not because my arms don't work, they are rickety, they're obsolete, or I don't have enough ammunition and things like that. If you're talking about students, right, asking a student, what do you want? If you're a female student, you want to be free from sexual harassment. You want to have the facility you need in school. You want to be able to have access, to everything you need to really fulfill your purpose in life. That is what the students would want. That is what will constitute justice and everything, to them. And if you're looking at our mothers, as I said earlier, this is equal opportunity. It is a recognition of the special role they have to play in the perpetuation of the Nigerian species, I like that coinage, and everything. It is just that recognition that they are mothers and they are also leaders. Because truly, a lot of us know the things that happen behind closed doors in our home. If you don't behave yourself, you know the kinds of sanctions that can come. But when we come out to the open, it's a different story. We now start flexing on things. So that is what social justice will mean for, say, a mother. If you're looking at somebody who is unemployed, what does that individual want? The justice that that person wants, the social justice that that person wants, economic justice is, I have gone through school, I'm eminently qualified, I want to have a good life. I want to have access to jobs, right? If you're talking to the private sector, all right, we don't want the kind of regulatory rascality that you see today. You made a point, I think, based on what Mr. Alder said earlier about the strangulation. the initiatives of young people, Florida Wave, Paystack, all of these guys, things that evolved not because of government, but in spite of government, right? And then you shut them down because they dared to express themselves, right? So for them, justice, social, economic will be allowing them to realize their full potential, to be the best that they can be, and to compete globally. So let me not take too much time, but these are my final submissions. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be on the conversation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wike. Indeed, no nation can be developed by accident. I'm going to go to you now, Professor Shonayet. Please give us your final thoughts on the topic and any areas you might not have touched during the course of this conversation.
Thank you very much. It's been such a wonderful conversation. And I really want to appreciate what the contribution that Ms. Nweke just made, because I was thinking along those lines too. That was why I said, who's the we in the theme of today's conversation? You know, because if we say the Nigeria we want, it would depend on who you are. You know, student, mother, and so on and so forth. And I think he has done it very well. It's been a pleasure to be with him and Mr. Alder on this call. My own final thoughts would be to say that, you know, societies have moments, I believe. There comes a moment in every society where you need to take the right decision. I believe that Nigeria stands as such a moment. And I just sincerely hope, you know, and pray that we will not miss this moment. You know, we would not, as it were, waste our pain. We've been through a lot of pain. It would be senseless, it would be mindless to waste all of that pain. Let us seize the moment and do something so radically different, you know, that the world would be alarmed. You know, I always say that Nigeria owes the world a big explanation. Mr. Alder had detailed, you know, the abundant resources that we have in Nigeria. How could you have all of that, both material, you know, and human resources on the one hand, in abundance, you know, like yafun, like we say in Nigeria. And then you have such a dysfunctional society on the other hand, you know, the incongruity of it all. So we stand at a great moment in our development, and we must seize this moment. I would really like to encourage us all to do so. And finally, is to say that we want a problem-solving orientation. We have this mentality of being overwhelmed, you know, by our problems, by our circumstances. And so we keep running, you know, to foreigners and so on. You know, people often talk about Nigerians going maybe to a foreign country, you know, for treatment, only to find that the doctor that's going to treat them there is a Nigerian. You know, we have the capacity to solve our problems. We must believe it, and we must hold our leaders, you know, accountable. Let them not keep wasting our resources, you know, by outsourcing our problems, the solutions to our problems. We can fix our problems. Now, to go back to that point that I started with about the French list of grievances, they called it the cahier de doléances in French. That thing came just before a revolution. And I'm just hoping that, you know, our conversation today will eventually lead, you know, to some kind of revolution in our country. I hope that it won't be a bloody one like the French Revolution, you know, but hopefully, you know, we will be able to make fundamental changes. So again, thank you very, very much. Thank you for your wonderful moderation of this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professional. It's always a pleasure hearing you speak and just the passion, that stems from you. And thank you very much for paving that path for younger women and the younger generation as well. So I'm going to come to you, Mr. Alder, to give your final thoughts on the conversation as well. I think his screen is still frozen. Okay, I think Mr. Alder might be having a network problem. It would have been really nice to obviously have him give his final remarks, but I think I'm just going to wrap up here. It's been a long afternoon, and I just want to say a big thank you to the ĽEX team for this great conversation. I think it's very timely. And it does it right. And congratulations on the event of your 15th annual lecture again. This has been a very profound conversation, and I just want to use this medium, as I always do with any platform I find myself, is in 2023, Nigeria will be going to the polls again, and that will determine the next 4 years of our life, and also, just years to come. It is one of the most anticipated elections that we're going to have. I tried so much to deviate from the political conversation during the course of this conversation, but everything kept on coming back to policy, people, leadership, and politics. So everyone needs to get involved, because without that, we cannot have socioeconomic advancement and progression. So when we talk about the Nigeria we want, then I think it's one where we have to be deliberate, where we need to make conscious efforts to ensure that the choices and the decisions that we make are reflective of the solutions that we seek for our dear country, Nigeria. Mr. Alder, welcome back. I will just, I think we've lost him again. Okay, great, perfect. I will just give you, and then I would round up from there. Just your final thoughts, please, before we finalize the conversation.
Let me quickly rush this because of the network issue. There are two cultures that are in contention in Nigeria. The two cultures are the big man culture and the youth culture. The youth own the culture, but they are making the mistake that my generation made, in which we got educated and we left the politics to the base people. We went into business, we went into every other thing, we even went into religion, but we left politics for the people, believing that we can dictate policy, not realizing that politics triumphs over policy. Now, there are two cultures. The first culture is the big man's culture, which is characterized by oppression, it's characterized by selfishness and covetousness. It's based on the African kingdom system, in which you can be covetous. A king can just lay his leg on another man's wife and claim him as his wife, and all that's rubbish that's, characterized checkered past. The youth culture is based on ideas, meritocracy, and transparency. There is nothing that the youths want to do that they cannot do. There is no party that has not been hijacked in this nation. Even the current APC was hijacked, the current PDP was hijacked. This is not the original structure.
I think we've lost you again, Mr. Alder.
You are.
Okay, you're back.
Businessmen, you are thinkers, you are
Well, oh dear, it's been a long afternoon. I think I'm going to wrap up from here, but thank you so much for the conversation. Thank you to our lineup of amazing panelists, Professor Remy Shonaya, Mr. Frank Nweke, and Mr. Lake Elder. And I'm going to hand over to the İLEX team right now. Thank you so much. And yeah, it's been a good conversation. I hope we take things on from here, and I hope we really make a change and get the Nigeria we want. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ǳK. I mean, you're right. It's been a wonderful conversation. Special thanks to you and the panelists for giving us an enriching and engaging conversation to really think about. So I'm aware that our poll results are out and they'll pop up in a bit on our screen. So we can see the votes, the percentage of votes that most of those responses got. Just a second. Well, while we wait for the results to pop up, I would like to call on one of our founding partners, Mr. Lawrence Fubara Anga, a senior advocate of Nigeria, to give us a vote of thanks. Hello, Mr. Anga, I think you're muted. We can't hear you. Okay, so the poll results are up on our screen. So the first question is, which sector of the Nigerian nation needs improvement the most? Out of three options, I would say that the economy got, oh, sorry, the political sector got the highest vote. I mean, it was, the political sector got the highest votes, essentially meaning that the sector of Nigeria that needs improvement the most is the political sector. And I think this aligns with the thoughts that the panelists have shared on this session. The next question is, hello, IT, please, could you load the next question? So the next question is, what do you consider to be the most pressing concern? Is it inflation, insecurity, dwindling oil prices, secessionist movements, or government borrowing? And the highest response we got here is insecurity. So that's the most pressing concern essentially for every one of the panelists or every one of the participants of this session. And I believe that also reflects the concerns of the majority of Nigerians. So in the course of this session, we only took 2 questions. So now I'll now invite Mr. Anga back to give his welcome address. Sorry, to give his vote of thanks, please.
Thank you very much, Odunaka. I have the very pleasant task of formally expressing the appreciation of the firm to all of you who participated in this conversation in our lecture. It is a season of anomie, and having listened to the very erudite panelists, I think you come away with mixed feelings. A bit of pessimism, but also a bit of optimism. And you know what they say, Nigerian pessimist is an optimist with experience. And so I think what we really should be saying is to move away from the conversation and move into action. We are each and every one of us the change that we wish to see. And so I say a very big thank you to our moderator, Ms. jourdke Faborode, who conducted and anchored the program so expertly, even though her dog also wanted to participate in the Nigerian conversation. I say a very big thank you to my friend, Mr. Frank Nweke Jr., to Professor Remy Shonaya. It's a pleasure listening to you. and to the brand master himself, Mr. ЛEX Alder. Each and every one of you are walking the talk. You're not just talking, but you're also making a change in your own spaces. And so we say a big thank you for participating in ŽLEX's event. I say a big thank you to, of course, all the people who've taken the time, despite competing events, to listen and in their own way too, try to make a difference in our society. I thank those of you who asked questions and who made interventions. Thank you, it has enriched the lecture. To the ŽLEX team that put this event together, a very, very, very big thank you to you, because you worked like it was a yeoman's job under difficult circumstances. Ngozi, Bisong, Mayowa, Bidemi, Ugonna, Joshua, Jibril, and Tobina, and all the other staff at ŽLEX. Thank you so much for all that you've done. Of course, we give certainly thanks to Almighty God for giving us the gift of life, the gift of health, and making it possible for all of us to be here. I remember the words of the old Nigerian national anthem. Over the last 3-4 weeks, I've had the opportunity of proposing a toast to Nigeria at 3 different occasions. And I just remember those words. O God of all creation, grant this our one request. Help us to build a nation where no man is oppressed. And so with peace and plenty, Nigeria shall be blessed. Thank you all. Good evening.
Thank you so much, Leonard Silk, for the vote of thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the end of this year's annual lecture. We appreciate your presence. A link to the recording of this session will be sent to your email addresses, and we encourage you to share it with your network. Please enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.